I served my apprenticeship in at Boyce Hill Golf Club in Essex, and when I was done with it and had passed the PGA tests, I moved to a nearby very busy golf course called Belfairs Park, and I was there for a couple of years and then emigrated. I did my apprenticeship with a wonderful man called Dennis Slocum, who was an incredibly good golfer. It was just a joy to watch him hit a golf ball. And he was replaced at Boyce Hill by an equally incredibly gifted golfer called Graham Burrows. I wasn't with him for very long, but he was wonderful. His father, Roy, great. And he went on to have quite a career playing in Europe before Europe was a big deal. And so uh, his golf swing was influenced very much by somebody I think he worked for prior to coming to Boyce Hill, which was a remarkable instructor in London called Leslie King. And he wrote this book that I'm going to show you uh, subsequently, obviously. And he had a system, and many people would go to him at his golf center, and all the good golfers in the area. So we had Roger Smith at the club there at the time, who was an advocate of his. And I think Michael Benalik, who was probably the best amateur golfer in Britain, uh, uh, certainly thought he was very impressive. Now, one of the things that obviously influenced me, although I didn't remember reading it until I reread it recently, is that he, in his book, advocated something that was very important to me, which is the idea of golf being not symmetrical and therefore the arms needing to be biased. And what I mean by that is that the arms would not be looking at their respective hips the way actually Ben Hogan advocated, but would have, yes, the right elbow looking at the hip, but the left one turned in such a way that the elbow is looking out. And the reason was simple enough, as far as I was concerned. We're pulling a heavy object from right to left, and it's pulling back on us. And if our arms are in this position, it's very easy for this arm to get dragged open, as they call it. That means turning the club face to the right and dropping it down. And people would then hit fat off the toe, weak to the right, unless they learn to do some extraordinary stuff to correct. So I thought it very important to have this elbow turned out so that the arm was in a position that really can't go any farther that way as you pull, and in fact is more efficient at turning to the left. And it dovetailed in with another book that made a big deal of influence for me, and that was The X-Ray Way to Better Golf. Ken Adwick, a family dynasty, if you will, of golfers. His uncle, father, son now, and certainly others in the family were all brilliant golfers. And he found a wonderful way of illustrating a golf swing because he was sort of frustrated at how it was generally done. He put lights on his hands and on the end of the club, little battery pack, and then opened the uh, shutter on a camera at night and had a swing. And you could see these lovely traces. And the most important thing he was able to demonstrate, and he mentioned it lots of times in the book, was this idea that we should swing into out was refuted. If you think of the target line going toward the target here through the ball, into out would suggest that the club approaches the ball from this side of that target line, goes through the ball, and goes out to the other side. Now, what he showed is that the backswing arc, because a big wheel that's leaning on the wall behind one, is actually more in close to the body, and that the downswing arc on all these champions was nested outside of that backswing arc, just not outside of the target line. And I'm going to develop that in a couple of conversations. The left arm is biased because it needs to be a resource to overcome the drag of the club, which is conspiring to drop the club and rotate it to the right. And unless you correct for those things later with extraordinary wrist action, your game is going to suffer. So as a resource, we turn the elbow so that it's looking at the target. That puts the shoulder higher. The tailbone, which is stuck out behind you, is shifted subtly toward your right heel, and that's why we have this body lean that is so characteristic of a good golfer. The right elbow is still bent and looking at the hip. Now, in this position, if you can keep in this shape as you walk up, get ready, waggle, and swing back, is now in a position to overcome the drag of the club. But it would not work brilliantly well unless you also understood that the downswing is not supposed to drop down, tuck in, and swing into out, as is commonly recommended. It's, I think, better to keep the arms fully extended away from your right shoulder. And of course, initiate the downswing by moving the hips and legs in this direction, not your head. And then as that brings all of this mechanism, this shape, down to about halfway through the downswing, it's built to actually respond like a spring and take the club through the ball correctly. So the downswing arc is outside of the backswing arc. And the reason for that is this. We're moving slowly on the backswing, and we start with the shaft more or less pointing at our middle, maybe a little less left of center. And as we turn the body, which I always recommend should be thought to have been done in the first half of the backswing, then your club is staying apace with that. You're not moving so fast that it's going to be lagging behind. Now, once you've then hinged your wrists and the club has reached what they call the top of the swing, and you start this pull down, the body is going to be in advance of the arms. They're lagging behind. They use the term lag. Well, I think that that term is very applicable to what the arms are doing. On the backswing, they stayed in front of you. On the downswing, they're lagging behind. And that means that your body gets back to the impact position, which is arguably a replica of your dress position, much sooner than the arms and club. And we hold on to the wrist action and only straighten it out as we get to the ball. So the arms have to be pulled down and then released. And that's how we apply force. So the club stays with us on the way back, generally pointing at the middle. And you see quite a lot of modern champions checking this spot halfway through the swing. The club's not moving fast enough to get left behind by the body. But on the downswing, it absolutely is being left behind. The body gets to the impact position, essentially a replica of the address position, much sooner. And the club is lagging behind. They use that term quite a lot in golf. Well, that means that the arc that the backswing took is going to be more what they call inside. In other words, this side of the target line, closer to the body, shall we argue. And the downswing will be arriving down an arc that is nested outside of that, still a curve, but farther from you than the backswing arc, just not so far as to cross the target line. And so here's the backswing, here's the downswing because of that lag.